Mike, do you see me?
Yes, I see you. Good and clear.
I didn't realize I had started the video yet. Let me stop it. Okay. Oops.
I did get your emails and I did read the article.
Okay, good. Let me just pause this. All right. I think the meeting's recording now.
Okay, we all set?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Bike and Ped meeting we have this evening. Mark, you have the attendance, I assume?
Well, let's introduce one another because we have two new members. And I'll just go in the order I see them on the screen here. So Mike Lester, why don't you just quickly say which group you represent and how long you've been on the committee or something.
Yes, Michael Lester. I live here in Hillcrest Avenue here in Middleton and on the committee a couple years.
You represent the Committee on Aging.
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Commission on Aging.
Yep. Susan?
I'm Susan West. I'm Alder for District 6, and on this committee, I represent the Public Works Committee.
Dan?
I'm Dan Ramsey. I'm the District 7 Alder, and on this committee, I represent Plan Commission.
Kathy is next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Kathy Jones, and I'm on the Aging Committee.
Oh, okay. Are you,
Okay.
so are you observing or are you?
No, I'm on the Pedestrian, Bike, and Transit Committee, and then I am also doing some aging on this committee, and I don't quite have that figured out yet.
Well, we're all doing some aging by the minute.
Okay, exactly.
So Kathy, when the mayor appointed you to the Aging Committee, was that with the understanding that you would continue on this committee?
Well, I thought so, but maybe I'm wrong. I would have to check.
I had wondered if that was the case. So because I don't think I sent you the packet, and you're very welcome here. I just don't know if you're.
Mark, I will double check on if it's on the city website.
Okay, well.
That was yesterday I got a list from Lori, and the aging designee for this committee was still open. And I don't know if has aging had a meeting recently?
No, we have not. We won't have one until next Monday.
All right.
And you would have had to be designated from a vote at the aging committee.
Kathy,
And Mike, you had been on this previously from aging, so I think until a new vote is taken, you would still have standing, I would think. I don't know.
That's how I would take it
Yeah,
too, Kathy. And you're both welcome to be participating in the meeting. I don't want to give you that impression. I just was trying to understand for the minutes. So.
But there is an issue on voting.
But yeah, there would be one vote.
Alder Olson is correct. Mike would have standing because there's been not a new designee. So I totally agree with her. I just didn't see Kathy here. I was, let's see here. Okay.
My understanding that Kathy was going to transfer to aging, Committee on Aging, and be off bike.
Okay.
That's how I understood it in the note that I had seen somewhere. I don't know where, but.
Okay. Well, let's continue to go through introductions. Pat Trainer, you're a new member. Why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Yes, as Mark said, I'm a new member. I have 2 computers going just in case one of them dies. I don't always have good luck with Zoom. This is the first city committee I've been on, so I'm really excited about this. I'm really interested in all of these different issues. I've ridden the bus to work. I ride my bike to work. Well, not now, I work from home. And I walk around the neighborhood a lot. So hopefully I can bring some good perspective to everything. And I'm very excited to start learning about these issues.
Okay, thank you. Dana?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Minogue, and I'm the superintendent in the school district. And this is my first meeting also. I'm really pleased to be a part of this committee, to contribute where I can contribute and to also learn as much as I can. So thanks so much for having me.
welcome. Next on my screen, I see Kathy again. That's weird. Okay, how about Peter? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Peter Connor. I live in Stonefield. I've only lived in Middleton a couple of years, and I've been on this committee for the last 2 to 3 years. Avid cyclists, do a lot of running through Pheasant Branch, and all my kids do the same. So I've vested interest in continuing that and doing it safely.
Okay, welcome. Well, welcome again. And now my screen ever got moved around. So I know Jim Schutz is there. Go ahead, Jim. Well, Jim is muted, but he's been on our committee for a couple of years, and we'll just move on to I don't see Nate Day. Nate, are you here?
Am I unmuted now? This is Jim.
Now you are, Jim. Now you are. Yep.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you. I don't see Nate. I see. Is there any other committee member that hasn't introduced themselves?
This is Nate. I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, Nate is there. Okay. Now I see you.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Nate Day. I've been on this committee for the past 2 or 3 years and been a resident in Middleton for about 8 years now. I got 2 young children, so we do a lot of walking and biking around town. So it's I enjoy being part of this committee, and yeah, okay. Look forward to another year of it.
Good. So we have all present. Dan, if you want to.
Mark, this is Kathy Olson. I didn't introduce myself formally. I'm District 1 Alder and representing the council.
Oh, that's what.
And I've been on this about 4 years, I believe.
Kathy, when I said Kathy earlier, then Kathy Jones jumped in. That's why. Okay, got it. All right. So we have all 9 members and a couple guests as well. So welcome everybody. Go ahead, Dan. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you all for coming. The first order of business is election of a chair and a vice chair. So we would entertain nominations for chair. Does anybody have nominations?
This is Susan. I would nominate Dan Ramsey.
I'd second that.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now, vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
This is Kathy Olson. Nate Day, would you accept a nomination for vice chair?
I will.
Nate?
I would second that.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. Do we have any other nominations? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, Nate, you are vice chair.
That means you're the chair of vice.
Or something.
Yeah.
Next, we'll have an opportunity for public comment. Are there anybody that has their hand up for a public comment? Them or Mark?
You know, because I'm not at my office computer, I can't see the screen like I usually can. So it would be easiest if people wish to talk just to speak up. I don't know how to see everybody on the screen.
Okay. Are there any public comments? Okay, hearing no public comments, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of May 28th. Do we have a motion?
This is Kathy Olson. I would move approval.
Susan, I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is the Metro Transit Service increased costs and potential service changes. Mark, you want to lead us in that?
I don't, but I will.
Yes, I know.
This is a very unpleasant topic, but it's a very important one, and this is why this was the main reason for meeting today. We have received information from Metro just last week. Obviously, they're still wrestling with the response to the pandemic, And there's been a significant reduction in ridership and, of course, revenue. They haven't charged fares since the beginning of the pandemic. We are estimating that, as you can see in this email from our finance director, Bill Burns, based on our conversation with Metro staff, that there will be a significant increase in what Middleton is billed for this year. 100,000 to 150,000, and without the CARES fund, that's what we would, that's what our increase would be. But they, it looks like the CARES funding will cover hopefully all of that. I just am wanting to revisit what he wrote here, so we can stay within budget. But the problem is moving forward into whatever transit service goes into effect in August. Normally we would maintain the status quo unless there was some new initiative. It's then next year when we would start having a significant increase in our budget, our bus service. So as Bill wrote here, our budget was about 500,000 for this year. Without any CARES funding, we would go to 600 to 650,000 in 2020, and to 800,000, so a 60% increase by next calendar year and the subsequent year. So actually, this does apply to 2021. Sorry, I haven't read this for a few days. Our share of CARES funding can be used to offset the increases. However, by 2022, with no change in service, we would see a 60% increase. So the concern that I have, and that I think the city obviously has, is we want to be positioned for when we no longer have the CARES funding. And, you know, I'm a little nervous about whether all this will come through, but that's, I guess, for all of us to sort through. So the question is, should we adjust our service starting in August to be responding and anticipating the shortfalls down the road? That's really the issue that's before you. Very briefly, the Metro Transit meeting that we had, let me try and reduce the size of the screen here. So, I don't want to walk through all of this, it was in the packet. So here's a good depiction of what impact the pandemic has had. So the current service is in red, that's entirely in Madison. That's 30-minute service. They call that their core. Well, for the pandemic, that's their core service. Everything in blue is a 60-minute service. And for us, that means Route 78, which is normally the Saturday route, has been running every day of the week.
Mark, when they say 60 minutes, does that mean the bus comes every 60 minutes?
Yes.
As opposed to a shorter interval?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, and that includes apparently Route 72, which actually I think that map, that's a little misleading. I think our Route 72 service has been continuing, the peak hour, peak hour service, which is roughly every 30 to 40 minutes. I think that's been continuing in its current form, but I'm not entirely positive about that, but I'm pretty sure it's continuing that way. But the Route 78 is the weekend service the Saturday service that's been applied to the entire week. There's now no service in gray, but a portion of that is in Southwest Middleton by PPD and then coming back on Greenway Boulevard. I'm not going to cover all this. So basically, you can see the ridership decrease from April of last year to this year. So it's, you know, anywhere from 80% lower to that looks like over 90% lower, depending on the route. Losing $1.1 million a month in fares, and they expect a drop. The Metro expects a drop in state revenue. They've also had to, of course, increase some costs due to sanitizing buses and swapping buses out. Deadhead time refers to when buses are not in service, and then increased use of sick leave. So expenses up, revenues down, is what's creating this problem. Metro and the city of Middleton, as a partner, a longtime partner with Metro, have continued to support transit because there's some essential employees of essential services, if you will, that rely on transit to get to their jobs. And so that's the main reason why bus service has continued in most metro areas around the country. Obviously, there's a number of people who don't have access to motor vehicles. So those are two groups that are very important to that rely on transit. CARES funding, you've probably all heard of that. It's offsetting or trying to supplant lost revenue for various government programs, including transit. Eligible for, well, I don't think we need to go through all this, but so the goals for Metro Transit is they're working to restore fare collection, ratchet up the maximum best passenger capacity. They've been at 15 riders. I think they were headed to 30, and I don't know if they actually went to that or if they're back at 15 because of where we are with the pandemic in Dane County. When they had to implement this route, when they had to respond so quickly as we all did to the pandemic, they basically just tried to maintain as many route patterns, current patterns as they could, because that was the easiest way to implement it. So they're working now on this new service plan. It's not been as proactive as I hoped, but they're obviously scrambling with everything on their end with the entire metro system. So they're hoping for 85% COVID service levels beyond August. I personally think that's optimistic, but that's their hope, their goal. They're preparing for that. Still potential that capacity limits will still exist. We all know that, where we are. They want to focus on restoring capacity in the high demand quarters. And in Middleton, I would say that that's Allen Boulevard up to the northeast side. That's our heaviest ridership. Branch Street has high ridership. But we really want to try and keep service throughout the city as much as we can. But we especially have high ridership on the east and northeast sides. It's obviously there's riders around the city, so we're doing the best we can to find that right balance. Some coverage may be lost. It has been lost. Route 71 has not been operating, and that serves the area south of University Avenue during the peak hour. So the Fox Ridge and Stonefield area, Gammon Road, Lost Parkways, Sweeney, Middleton Street, that area is that loop. And also that affects Greenway Center. So basically everything south of University Avenue has less bus service than it used to. But Route 78 has still been serving that area on an hourly basis. We'll be discussing in a moment whether we should change Route 78 and change back to Route 70 service. So I'll get to that in a moment. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. We have, this is the feedback that they've been getting about Middleton service. I'll try and make it a little larger. I'm trying to remember here it is. So in general, there's a request to add an extra bus back to the Middleton commuter routes. Apparently this is in response to, the buses are, the person feels it's a little crowded. So maintain better physical distancing. Someone said they like that we now have Sunday service, which we haven't had in the past. Whether that's sustainable, obviously, is a key question. Passengers upset that, oh yeah, so this is a specific time of day that the service was, that is switched to Route 78. That's understandable. And then here's a bus that broke down, requests more frequent service to Middleton. So I won't go into all the details here, it was in your packet. So basically, the challenge here, I do have a little bit more information, and this is where I have to change my screen. One second here. Share. Let's see here. All right, so this is what I received today from Metro Transit in terms of our current hours of service for each route. Route 70 makes up about half of our service. That's the route that goes, serves the whole city during the off-peak hours. Route 72 is the morning peak hour service, which is probably one of the most cost-efficient services that we have because of ridership revenue that we get from that route. 73 is a tiny portion of the route that's largely funded by Madison because it goes south of Greenway, from Greenway Center south, and most of that's in Madison. And then 78 is the Saturday service. So this is what Metro's proposing to offer for beginning on August 23rd. So
Are we supposed to be saying something, Mark, besides your directory? Are we supposed to be saying something besides just the
yeah. Why did that not open? All right, sorry. This is why I should be on my, just a second. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. Sorry about that. You share. There you go.
That's what you should be seeing.
Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, I'm understanding how this works better now. So here's the, thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up. So I had hoped to put some dollar values to, well, let me, before I say that, so the total service is 9,700 hours, 9,771 hours. Compared to this year, that's 10,600. So we're about 870, just under 900 hours less service for next year. That is if we go back to Route 78, which is Saturday only service, being on Saturdays instead of 7 days a week. So what they're doing, just to restate it for clarity, is instead of doing the Route 78 service, which is all day, right now, in response to the pandemic, it was a quick placeholder. That service is oriented to the West Transfer Point in Madison, and the disadvantage of that is that we pay the entire. Let me pull up I should have thought of that Metro Transit map. Just a second. Let me pull that up so we can see this. What do you see? Oh, see, now it's now you see my screen. Oh, interesting. Okay. Now it's going with the screen. All right, so route. Let's see here. Oh. Well, actually, let's do the map here. We can, shoot. There we go. Okay. Can you if I open this? Okay, good. So what you see here is everything. This is Middleton up here, and our service goes the big W down here is the West Transfer Point. So the Saturday service, which is now being run every day of the week, including Sundays, comes up to Middleton, does a loop. It goes counterclockwise 1 hour, then clockwise the next hour to help facilitate traveling within Middleton. But it's oriented to the West Transfer Point. And the moment it leaves the city limits, which is at Allen and University, the city of Middleton is charged this amount as well because it's a closed door bus. It doesn't open, it doesn't stop at bus stops in Madison. And the reason for that is because we wanted to keep it on an hour-long rotation, and opening the buses, stopping at the bus stops there was going to make it a little bit more than an hour. So the city's been paying for this Saturdays only, but right now during the pandemic, it's been operating every day of the week, including Sunday. But we actually added service on Sunday, which I was concerned about and pointed out at the time, but Metro, for simplicity to respond and schedule things, they basically wanted to do it this way. So that's the weekend service that we would be going back to that under Metro's proposal. And then the rest of the other routes, zoom in on those. Sorry, this is getting kind of detailed. So the rest of the routes, can you all see that? Jim, I'm sorry if that's hard for you to see.
That's okay. Yeah.
So this is a confusing map, but starting at the bottom, well, let's start at the top. 72 is that peak hour north side, largely north side route that comes out in the morning from the square. All these routes are oriented to the square, not the West Transfer Point. So they serve campus. And so it comes out Brand Street, goes up to the northeast side, and then continues west and goes down Northbrook. It does this loop. So, and I didn't say that quite right, actually. Let me restate, let me start over. because this changed a few years ago and I had the old pattern in my head. So what the 72 actually does when it comes out from the square in the morning, it in theory, and it does bring people out from Madison to work in Middleton. It goes up Allen Boulevard and then goes west out Airport Road and then down to Industrial Park, and then comes back in. And as it comes back into the city, into the residential area, that's when it picks people up and goes to the northeast side and does this. So it's designed to be kind of a push-pull service where it brings people out from campus and downtown Madison, and then they get off the bus and then it picks Middleton, you know, so it's a workhorse in both directions. So that service is, they want to go back to that service, and I recommend that, I support that, because this is an important, you know, this provides some of our heaviest, has some of our heaviest ridership. The service in the morning coming out is very light because most people drive to our business park, to our business parks, I should say. We do have some transit dependent folks who work out in the business park here, Top Promotions in particular. And so that's one reason we reconfigured the service a few years ago to provide service to those people. The Route 71 comes out in the morning and does this line. It's very hard to see. This comes down University Avenue and then does this loop and goes into Greenway Center and picks people up, you know, drops them off first and then from Madison, and then picks them up on Greenway Boulevard and goes through Kathy's district and district south side of Middleton and comes in, goes downtown. And that's also, and actually it also goes down Mendota Avenue and picks up people on Allen Boulevard. So that is a very a good route too in terms of ridership, because it's only during the peak hours, the commuter times. And so during the off-peak hours is when our buses are running much emptier, which makes sense. So keeping the peak hour services is really important. But during the off-peak hour, but right now Route 71 would not continue under Metro's proposal. However, Route 70, which is the non-peak hour route and basically serves the entire city. I want to go to a different map for that. Before I go to Route 70, I want to show you in yellow or gold the Route 73. That's the one that touches Middleton just briefly, and why that has few hours. It goes down and serves, goes down to the West Transfer Point ultimately here. It goes to Junction Road and West Town and ends up at the, I'm sorry, past Woodman's, Walmart, and then up to Odana Road and West Transfer Point. So that's actually a connection to the West Transfer Point in the morning, but that's not very heavily used by Middleton residents, although it is an option for people to commute to the, you know, to get to the west side.
Mark?
Yes.
Could we just take a second to see if anybody's got any questions before you go any further?
Well, okay, because I'm going to lose this screen then. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to make sure that nobody has any questions or is getting lost here. So anybody have any questions? No? Okay, keep going, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I didn't mean to rattle on without breathing. Well, let me just show you Route 70 by itself, because it's easier to see when it's just its own route. Why didn't that come up? Well, that's weird. I don't know why the map didn't come up. Full list.
Would it be because it's not available? That route isn't available now?
That's a good point. That might be it. Oh, here we go. This map isn't necessarily any easier to read, but so basically, let me zoom in here. Actually, it's hard to zoom in on this because it's a website. Oh, here, full size image. Is that better?
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know how to make that any better. Sorry. So this shows you the route we have during the daytime. So it comes out, let's start again, coming out from Madison. Instead of going up to Branch Street like the 7, no, I won't say that again, I'm saying it wrong. So it comes out University Avenue, goes up Allen, picks up, you know, serves the northeast side, and then it does the entire city, including the south side. So I misspoke a little bit earlier, saying that the south side wouldn't have the service. what I'm concerned about with the metric proposal is that the south side wouldn't have the peak hour service because this only runs during the off-peak hour. So, so this would provide all-day service. It is very confusing and it's hard to explain, but basically all the areas you see here in white and in the gray, depending on whether it's morning or afternoon, they're all served morning and afternoon. It's just the direction of travel changes for part of it. And I won't go into that because it's just it's very complicated. It's too complicated in my opinion, but somehow people have figured it out. So, so this is what they would propose to continue, as well as the 72, which serves the north side, the 73, which goes to the 73, which is in gold, and then the 78 is the one that's on Saturdays only. So going back to the hours of service, are there any questions about the map and how their bus system is structured? Okay, so this is where I have to change screens. Let's see, hours of service. Oh, okay, good. I think I found a better way to run the meeting. Okay, good. So going back to these hours of service, if we're concerned about our sustaining our service in the future, one option would be, that would be very easy, would be to eliminate Route 78, but that would be eliminating Saturday bus service. I don't have the ridership numbers handy right now, but it's from memory over the last several years, it's averaged between 100 and 125 riders a day. Obviously, that's 125 people who rely on the bus and, you know, for transportation. So that's obviously it's important to keep that in mind. Otherwise, there's not really a simple way. The only other way to reduce service, if that should become necessary, is to essentially fritter away at the early margins. You know, at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that would be easy. It's not. It would be relatively easy to do. What oftentimes people say is, well, why don't we have alternating buses during the day? And so instead of hourly service, have it every other hour. The problem with that, it's something we can look into, but it's not that simple because buses are, you know, you still have to pay the driver and operate the bus when it's not. You know, the buses aren't going to go back to, the driver's not going to just go side of the road and sit there for an hour and then operate the bus again without compensation. So there's, you know, the buses are, there's a system, and oftentimes buses are interlinked with each other with other routes in the system. And so it's not as straightforward to simply say, we're going to remove one, you know, I'll go to alternating hours of service, but it is something we could look into in the future. I'm not as, because of the CARES funding, in some ways this isn't as much of a crisis imminently, but the 60% increase in the future is something I wanted to alert the committee to, so that you're aware this is coming, because I suspect that will be very hard to sustain that with our current budget challenges that we're going to be having in the next couple of years. So that's why I wanted to bring this to you right away, get your feedback, any direction you have, and you know, what direction you're going to recommend. I'd like to take this to the council for their discussion on Tuesday as well. So that's my background, Dan. Sorry about the long.
Nope, very good. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
This is Kathy Olson. Pat, you ride the bus. What are your, I'd really like to hear what you have to say on your thoughts on this.
Kathy, I ride the bus that isn't running right now. So,
okay.
And it's, you have to time it. You have to, you know, you have to make sure if you, for me, at least because of where I live, if I miss the bus, there's a bus that goes into Madison. I think it's 15. It's a bit of a walk. I think you can get off at Wexford Park and walk into the southern part of Middleton. And I've done that a couple times, or on a nice day, I'll do that. So it can be done. I think as long as you plan it out, I think it works. I would be more concerned about people who don't have any flexibility and have to be somewhere at a certain time, right, and they were relying on the bus to get them there. I mean, for me, my hours are more flexible. Okay. But someone who doesn't have that flexibility, I guess I'd be a little more concerned about.
Okay.
I had a question for you, Mark. And maybe you won't know this, that CARES funding, is there any chance that that would be used for something else, or is it earmarked enough for this as an eligible cost that the city would use it for this?
I just want to make sure you guys are, what do you see on your screen right now?
I see the bus, I think it's
Okay,
the
okay,
PowerPoint
good.
with the comments.
All right, good. It's sharing properly now. So your question about CARES funding, Pat, is, could you restate the question, please?
Is it something that the city has to use for this? Or is it something that the money could get here and the city could say, let's not use it for that, we could use it for something else?
Oh, I see your question. I think we had to apply specifically for, to apply the funding for certain purposes. If I'm not mistaken, I'll defer to the council members actually, because especially those of you on finance, because you can answer that question better than I can, I think. I'm not an expert on CARES funding, but I believe it's earmarked for transit specifically.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
Dan, was that it?
I'm trying to remember now.
I thought when I read something that it was already approved for the transportation.
Right. It's not going to get shifted somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My initial thoughts are, and I don't ride the bus, but to eliminate a whole day of service, people who have jobs, they can't work with that. And not everybody has flexibility in their schedule, but if we did adjust bus times, once people's schedules are set and they work with their employer, that might be easier to do than not have any transportation on a Saturday, where they may have a little more flexibility in what the bus, setting their hours. That's just my initial thought. So instead of eliminating all of Saturday.
Yeah. Dan, can I comment?
Yes, please, Susan.
Yeah, I would prefer that we not cut the schedules back for multiple different reasons. There are a lot of people whose jobs are on the weekends. So anyone in the service industry or so on. And they would need that service. And if we cut some of that out, that could be a real problem for them.
Right.
Something else I'm concerned about, and this is for people that work downtown or at the university. One of the reasons that they ride the bus, even if they have cars, is the reduction in, they don't have to pay parking cost, which is substantial. So 6 or 7 years ago when I was at the university, it was $900 a year for parking. That can be, on a lower income person, a huge financial drain. So considering all the problems that everyone is dealing with, if council can find some way to keep bus service going, I think we would do a lot for the entire citizenry of Middleton, and especially the more financially disadvantaged people. So I'm really would like us to keep the whole service, and for council and finance committee to try to figure out ways to adjust with this.
We just hot off the press, or hot off the digital press, if you will, the web. We just got this email at 5:37 today, and I'm just reading it with you for the first time too. This is from Metro Transit's finance manager. And so what he's saying, I'll just read it out loud in case anyone can't read it. The revenue service hours in 2019, which after allocating deadhead, which is the time the bus is not actually picking people up, arrived at 10,359 vehicle hours for which Middleton was charged. He's asking a question about 9771 hours. So he's asking Drew that question. So the question, Drew answered, he's their transit planner, one of their planners. He responded separately, and it's not in this email, but I saw it on my screen. He said this included, the answer to the question is that includes deadhead hours. So that's the total that we would be charged. If it's service hours, then I would need the total deadhead hours associated with each route. So we have, this number reflects both, is my understanding. When you ran the calculation for the 21 budget, you came up with the cost of $810,000 for Middleton, which includes no credit for CARES funds. If 9771 is the vehicle hours assigned, then the cost would be 774 without CARES allocation. So that's the answer, and that still is a whopper of a number. So in other words, with the reduction of Route 71 in the future, without the CARES funding, we would be looking at a budget increase of let's call it $275,000. So I don't know whether the CARES funding, if we are guaranteed to have that in 71 or not. That is a fundamental question that I think from Bill's email earlier. Let me go back to that. Let me think, where is that? So here's Bill's email. Is it on your screen? Just double check. Yes, that's on your screen. Let's see.
So the CARES funding is $350,000 to $400,000.
Middleton's share of CARES funding is $350 to $400, which can be used to offset the increase in both years. Okay, good. So it's in both years. But then we still have the problem in the future. So, you know, that's, and I understand where Susan's coming from in terms of wanting to sustain the service. It's just, I'm just cautioning that we are headed towards a big challenge.
Yeah, well, Mark, what I'm thinking is this committee needs to determine, is this a really important service we want to provide? And then Finance Committee and Council will sort out where the money comes from. Does that make sense in the process? Because we don't have the authority to sort out funding for other parts of the city.
Susan, you're not asking the finance and council to say, okay, we have this much money, we're going to get rid of this route or that route, or we're going to adjust it here or there. I think that's this committee's purview, is to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck before we send it to finance.
I would agree.
I agree with that, but I think we also need to be aware that we shouldn't be cutting routes just to meet a certain target. We need to give council the option of, okay, we need these routes, and please try to come up with some way of funding this. So maybe if we prioritized.
Well, we have to do that. We can't just say, we would love 24-hour bus service. Can you see what you can do, the best you can do for that? We have to give them guidance on what we need for transportation. And I think that comes from saying which buses are best used. And I don't think we just say, yes, we want public transportation.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying keeping it at what level we have it first is our first choice, not to increase it, but keep it at the level that we have, and really encourage council to
service
fund
at the level it is, and let them come up with the money for it.
Yes. And if there's some route that's not used very much at all, then we need to identify what those are.
Exactly.
So what's missing from this data that we don't have good data right now is ridership amounts. But I can tell you that basically where the buses that have the lightest ridership are the Route 78, the Saturday service, which is, you know, under 125 passengers a day. And then the off-peak Route 70, which is, you know, between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and then later at night, that has fewer riders too. But if you're a student on campus, you live in Middleton, you know, you come home at 9 at night, 10 at night, you know, I mean, there are people who rely on that. And as I'm sure Alder Ramsey can tell you, that there's quite a few people that ride the bus on his side of town that, you know, ride it throughout the day. So,
Mark, do we know what type of alternative transportation these 100 125, 130 people are using now that there is no service?
Well, there is service though. So that's the Route 78 is operating. The Saturday service is operating 7 days of the week. So the question I think you're asking is, what's happening to the Pat trainers of the world, if you will, Pat, if I can use you as the example. So the people who don't have the same route that they used to have that's oriented towards campus or to Hill Farms and beyond. Because the bus right now, isn't that right, Pat? The bus doesn't go down to the square now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. The northeast side of the city, or Route 72 does, but the south side does not have service to the square during the peak hour.
Is there a transfer point where people could get to the square from here?
The answer is yes. And you know what? That's something I've actually never specifically looked into, but in theory, well, not, and in practice, it's possible to transfer. I just couldn't tell you what's the time interval. So somebody could, so let's use Pat, since she's new and we're picking on her. So she could get on the Route 78 and head towards, let's say, Imperial Garden at Allen Boulevard. So that intersection, she could get off the Route 78 and wait for the Route 72 to come by. What that interval is probably anywhere between, it could be up to a half hour, maybe 40-minute wait. So if that, so it's a transfer possibility. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 15. I didn't actually ever check that. That's a very good question.
That's something that would be helpful to know.
Yeah.
And certainly someone that is truly dependent on the bus service could deal with, it's not ideal, but they could deal with it.
Yeah. I don't want to take you. I wish I had my, actually, I think I do have a ride guide upstairs. I could probably grab it, but we have a long agenda and I don't want to get bogged down. So,
Hey, Mark?
Yeah.
Mark, this is Jim. On the 70, the 70 isn't running right now, right? But
Correct.
the 71, 72, is the cost of that route prorated? Because Madison riders use it.
Yes. So anything, with the exception of Route 78, all the other routes are only billed to the city for the portion that operates in the city. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, if we do end up having to play around in the margins, is there going to be, at some point, are we going to be able to have costs for each one of these routes and be able to have ridership for each one of these routes? I mean, if we do get to the point where we have to pick at the margins, are we going to have some basis from which to do that?
The answer to that is, I don't have it at my fingertips now, but Metro should be able to get us that. I just wasn't able to get it here in the last week. And plus, we don't have good ridership to draw from now, but we could look at ridership.
Could you look at last year's data?
Well, and they've never given me ridership by hour or by bus. I don't believe they collect that on a regular basis, but they're able to they have certain buses that collect that data that they route around their system. In other words, they can capture the data at every bus stop. They don't do that with all their buses. They don't have the technology installed on every bus. But Dan, I will pursue that with them and get that data, and we can use last year's data. That's better than using this year's. So,
yeah, I think that's what we need for making any decision.
Yeah.
The next question I would have, Mark, is we're talking about at this point these routes in their breakdown, what they're suggesting, and that would start August 23rd.
Right. Right.
So at what point do we have to say to them, yeah, that's what we want?
Well, we're basically, the next Wednesday, it's my understanding, Metro Transit staff is going to the Madison, whatever they're called now, Transportation Commission. I can't remember what their title is. They recently changed it. And that's where they wanted to get their blessing to, I don't know if they're having a hearing or if it's, but they were planning to make a decision at that meeting to, so that they can prepare and implement the service 1 month later. I'm increasingly comfortable as we've been talking through this, and I've been reviewing the material the last few days. I'm increasingly comfortable with Metro's proposal here, as long as we have that CARES funding for this year. What I'm nervous about is, will that CARES funding be there? You know, is that already committed for next year? That's one question I don't know. So that's a question I want to find out by the council meeting next week.
Okay.
That's a very important question. Metro likes to make their service changes at the end of August and then also in January. That's typically what they do for service changes. So if we find that we're going to have a major funding, you know, costs that we can't cover with our, you know, close to our usual budget, then in January we would have the opportunity to restrict service further.
Okay.
So I'm increasingly comfortable sustaining what we have. It's just there's an inconvenience for the south side, essentially during rush hour.
I think we're in a state of flux right now because we don't know how long this COVID-19 is going to be lasting. We could be another year under the umbrella of that. And I think things are kind of fluid right now. So if we move forward with the assumption of the CARE Act for now, then I think we're going to have to revisit this as time goes on here.
Yeah, this is Jim. I would agree with that. If they're talking and anticipated back to 85% ridership by, what did they say, August?
Well, I would, in the past they were saying fall, September, October, but I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's extremely optimistic.
Yes.
Now, if that ridership does not materialize, therefore their revenue does not materialize, are we going to be faced with increased costs?
The answer to that is yes. That's why we already seeing the increased costs. Ridership typically is about a quarter, 25 to maybe 30%. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number of the revenue that Metro receives. Ridership is it's on that low end, which is not that uncommon. I'm giving you, I think, a conservative number. It might be a little higher than 25%, but it certainly isn't approaching 50%. Obviously, federal, state aid, other funding sources like that make up the balance. And then, of course, the cities are subsidy. So farebox recovery, and that's why making sure we do a good job on the peak hour routes is so important, because that's, you know, getting our, you know, maximizing the efficient service, the efficiency of the service.
Mark, I have another question that could affect this, because we have a lot of graduate students that live in Middleton and probably undergrad students. I have been trying to pay attention to what the university's doing, but I'm not quite sure how open they're going to be. And that would definitely affect ridership tremendously.
I'm listening.
So I've got a little bit of a problem without knowing that, which is a substantial part of their ridership, they're pushing us to make decisions without full information.
This is Dana Minogue. I believe the university system has announced that they're going to be open. They're going to have fewer large-scale lecture halls,
Right.
But they're going to be open.
But there's a lot that's still going to be online. That's why I'm concerned.
So you're saying we wouldn't have as much ridership then?
I would be concerned they don't have as much ridership.
Mark,
especially if they've got for the larger classes, the online teaching.
Mark, this is Jim again. The question you mentioned about the ridership on 78.
Right.
That ridership of 100 or 125, is that current, or was that from last year's figures?
Oh, it's not current. Well, current, you don't want to see the numbers.
No, but doesn't mean.
No, that was last. We've had Route 78 now for about 10 years, and I was talking about last year. Current numbers have been, you know, well, I saw numbers from May, and they were, you know, in the 40s to 50s, 60s a day. So it was, you know, I don't, and unfortunately the data was all over the map. It was like one day on a Sunday they had 0, and the next Sunday they had 57 riders, which made no sense. And Metro tried to explain it for me, something with their data. I didn't understand the explanation.
Because the other thing I wonder, depending on what activities are going on this fall at the university or downtown, I would anticipate that ridership could be quite low. It's not going to, we're not looking at 125 people going downtown Madison on a Saturday.
Yeah, that's where my concern over graduate students who have gotten beyond that first year of taking classes and are doing research. Those labs are opening up very, very slowly and at staggered times. And that's going to be a tremendous amount of our ridership.
Well, I think that's, someone asked the question earlier about, I think Nate, you asked it about alternate transportation options. You know, I've started seeing more scooters around. You know, I've seen more bicyclists the last few months. Obviously in the winter that becomes much more problematic. But I think people have tried to find some alternatives, but clearly some people are reliant on the bus. So,
yeah.
And Uber,
Mark,
Lyft are still out there too.
Yeah. Something else could, if you can't, I'll try to make a call in to find out, at least for the university, for parking, if they've suspended the charges for parking and just opened up the parking lots, since many faculty are going to be working from home.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, well, I think we need to find that one out.
Peter, I think, knows.
There's a lot of things we don't know about. And I think it's very difficult for us to make a decision now because of lack of knowledge. And I think things are going to be changing over the next couple of months. And so I think we're just going to have to revisit it at that point.
Peter Connor, I think, had something to say, Mr. Chair.
Peter, go ahead, please.
Yeah, they already recontinued the fees for parking a month or two ago. And graduate students, at least the ones that are doing research, have been going back since June. Although the other note about hybrid classes at the university is true, and also keeping in mind they're not returning after Thanksgiving as well.
Right. I think there's a lot of questions that we don't have answered, aren't going to be able to have answered. But at the same time, I think the thing that we need to do is, because this has to be set up in August, we need to send and hoping that we get some more information in a short period of time, because I think the committee send some kind of recommendation to council of what we would like to see as bus service. We're not going to be able to, at this level, I don't believe that we're going to be able to necessarily figure out the dollars and cents of it all. But what, you know, from this committee's standpoint, what direction do we want to send to, this kind of goes back to what Kathy was saying, what direction do we want to give the council, what kind of recommendation? I think that's kind of where we're at here. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I would recommend not knowing what is going to happen as far as ridership and what the needs are going to be. Is I think we need to just continue the service that we have now.
The service as they're proposing, you mean, Jim, or the service that they're recommending, or the service they have today? Or
probably the service that they're proposing. with the service they're proposing, was that going to include the Sunday?
No, it would have no Sunday service, and the Route 71 would be missing from that too.
That would be Route 70, 72, 73, and 78. Yep, that's the graphic right there. That's what their proposal is.
That
And
would be
that's-
it. I don't think we have the answers. We're not going to have the answers by the time we have to make a recommendation on this. So my feeling would be that to recommend that with that proposed service at this point, and then take a look at it again later.
I think that's the best we can do. In other words, in another 2 months, take another look at it.
Just to make sure I understand what you're saying, and I wanted to make one more point too. Right now, we don't have Route 71 service, and so Metro's essentially saying, let's not restore that service. There hasn't been that much pushback from the loss of that service. So are you saying, I'm sorry if I didn't understand you correctly, Jim, are you saying go with the service that we had before the pandemic, or go with the service that Metro is now recommending?
I'm trying to remember, where did the 71 go again, roughly?
That's south of University Avenue. It comes out from Madison on University Avenue, briefly goes up towards Costco, Discovery Drive, but most of the rest of the route is south of University Avenue. So, and it's a peak hour route, peak hour only. So I think it's 4 buses in the morning, 4 in the afternoon. So it serves Foxwood, Stonefield, and Greenway Center. But Greenway Center still has service from Route 73 during the peak hour. So it's not, Greenway Center, really the desert, if you will, the transit desert, it would be from downtown Middleton south, Fortune Drive, Sweeney, Middleton Street, that area during the peak hour service. That's where the loss would be.
What's the ridership on those buses? What was it? We need to know that.
Yes. And are those are parts of the city that don't have a high number of apartments, do they?
No, the biggest stop there is the corner of, right by the mayor's house. Fortune and
Sweeney.
Sweeney. Yeah. And that's that's where I used to live, and that's where I used to get the bus. What's that called? Apartment. I can't remember there's several multifamily buildings, apartments and condos there. And we surprisingly haven't had more complaints. I've been really surprised. It's just been a 1 or 2.
Well, people are trying to do the best they can with COVID.
Right.
They're knowing that this isn't going to last forever, and they're just trying to get by. But to remove it, you might hear more about it. If you permanently take it away, and
But another thing, in that area, you would be within about a half-mile walk, either to get a bus in Middleton or to be able to get a bus in Madison. If you're talking about the Fortune Drive, Sweeney area.
We usually, as a rule of thumb, want to have service. Ideally, you'd have service within a 5-minute walk. That's a rule of thumb that transit planners use. You're correct, Jim, that it would be half a mile. So a quarter mile, 5 minutes is the standard. This half a mile would be, in theory, about 10 minutes. So Pat probably could tell you how long it takes her to walk, but it's probably on the 10 minutes, about 10 minutes. And then, I really don't think ridership's going to rebuild as quickly as Metro is.
I don't either.
Yeah.
No.
So
I agree with that too.
yeah. So I think, they want to have the successful transit system and meet people's needs, which I completely respect. But I think realistically, it's going to take a long time to recover. So
I agree with that.
yeah. But CARES is the good thing about CARES is it's going to cover. We do have some time, if you will. I just didn't want you to be surprised with the big bills that we are going to be facing. We need to be planning ahead, and we do have some time to see how this proposed service from Metro, how that materializes, and make some adjustments, this fall before January if necessary. And I will find out about the CARES funding.
Can I ask one question just going forward? Is it possible to get more information from Madison Metro about ridership to those other areas, both coming into Middleton, possibly for people working here, and then going out, knowing that it's going to be strange for a while, but just maybe not so much in the next couple of months, but once things sort of normalize again. So when we do get to the point where the CARES funding isn't available, we have a little more data to base the decisions on for what kind of service we might think we need.
Asking for more data in the next few months, yes.
Probably, yeah, and more beyond that, probably, because I'm guessing the next couple months, not a lot's going to change, or it's still going to be kind of strange numbers. So maybe more after the first of the year, asking for data, hoping by then things are normalizing a little bit.
So does anybody have a motion they would like to make as far as a recommendation for council? Or do we, I think kind of the question on the table is, are we interested in pursuing what they have as their perspective for Route 70, 72, 73, and 78 for August?
Dan, I would say that needs to be the minimum of what we consider. And we don't have enough information to go above that.
I'm sorry, we don't have enough information to
go above what they're proposing if we wanted to add anything. So we should not cut what they're proposing. So I would make a motion we accept what they're proposing.
I would like to make a motion that we do accept their proposal for service at this point, but to indicate we are doing this based on a number of unknowns, and that at some point we want to revisit this with more data. But at this time, that is our best decision we can make.
Yes, I would second that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Susan, because they were very similar.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to say,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as eloquent.
So the motion by Jim Schutz, seconded by Susan West, to accept Metro's proposal for service, but reserve the right to make modifications to the service as more data becomes available.
Are there any more?
Amendment?
Go ahead.
Assuming we get the CARES money.
So you want that added as to sustain the service with the assumption that we have the CARES money as part of that.
Correct.
Are you good with that, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
So can I read it one more time quickly, because I know we want to move on.
Yes, please.
So the motion's to accept their proposal, Metro's proposal for service. So their service proposal, based on the assumption that CARES funding is in place through 2021. Is that what we're saying, or is it, or for 2020?
Well,
I would say 2020.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2020.
because part of that motion was to revisit, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd go along with that.
Okay, I got the rest of the motion then. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The motion carries.
All right. Our next item is the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor Master Plan, but I'm going to get to that while you can start commenting on that, Dan, if you like.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
As you, some of you know, Alder West represented our committee when they were evaluating the engineering and design services. So this is kind of on here. Susan, could you give us an update on what transpired at that meeting and what your recommendation was?
Okay. I was representing this committee for the trail park part of it. I represented stormwater utility for restoration of the creek corridor. The actual project, we had bids, 2 different sets of bids, one for restoring the creek corridor, the other for building the trail and the bridges after the creek corridor is restored. For the creek corridor, we had, I think it was 5 companies that bid on it. And the committee narrowed it down to 2, Cardno and I'm blanking on the other one.
It's on your screen now.
MSA.
MSA, yeah. And Cardno was significantly cheaper. The other thing I will say, and so we're going to let council and finance make the final decision. Cardno is the company that restored or rerouted the creek around the Cromrie area. And that part of the creek suffered almost no damage during the flood, which is a very, in my mind, a very strong recommendation for their capabilities. There was another part of the creek that they had also restored even earlier that had minimal damage. But council will have to, or finance and council will have to decide between those 2 committees. Then for the actual trail and bridges, there were 3 companies, KL Engineering, MSA, and Strand. We chose MSA and Strand. I'm not sure there was a whole lot of difference in cost or actually what they're proposing. A lot of what they're going to be proposing will be determined after the creek is restored, because there might be channel changes and removing 2 bridges if possible. So again, council and finance will be choosing between those 2. The proposals were almost identical, with a little bit of difference in cost. So does anybody have more detailed questions?
Well, according to what Mark Wagner sent, it looked like MSA got the nod for the trails and bridges. Is that correct?
No, I think it's both due, with finance choosing. We didn't do KL.
KL had a problem with their timeline. It was much, it wouldn't go out to bid until the end of 2021.
Yeah.
It says here, after deliberation, the selection committee voted 4-2 for MSA over Strand.
Okay.
And MSA, I thought, had it was very clear that they were in favor of the 12-foot paths. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, I think, Kathy, on the paths, it's the biggest issue is, will there be room there, and all in different consistently room. There's probably going to be some places where it's going to need to be a little narrower, depending on.
That was our motion, yeah. We understand that, yeah.
Right, but
it does say in here that MSA did get the nod. So
okay,
from the for the RP.
It was a real. They were so similar. One of the things I'd like to say is they were both concerned about safety issues in terms of the amount of area between the trail and the creek corridor being sufficient and not needing railings along the corridor, or along the trail. I felt real confident either one of those can do a very good job.
I thought the hours, they came out pretty similar also, the number of hours that they would commit to the project.
Right, for the trail part.
But MSA did have a few more hours, you know, maybe
Mhm.
70 more hours that they had included in their bid, so.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing that wasn't considered as much that is of interest to this committee is Strand has been working on the trailhead, which is just north of Century at Branch Street, whereas it has knowledge and expertise on that in terms of, and we're going to incorporate some of that in terms of their design, which MSA doesn't have.
Right.
Okay, does anybody else have any more questions for Susan? Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move on to item number 4, policy on in-street pedestrian crossing signs.
This is one of the items, I know Alder Olson has been interested in this and crosswalks. This is a memo that Sean Stowski, the city engineer, has provided and requested your guidance on. I know the mayor's interested in this as well. Several communities in the area, Wanakee has been cited quite a bit, have placed these cautionary or I wouldn't say warning, but signs in the center of a street to warn people about in-street crosswalks, high volume crosswalks essentially. And so there's been requests to the city over the years to have some of these. I know several of you actually have been interested. And so this is Sean's report, identifying potential locations and placing them possibly near schools. The mayor has suggested the first 4 bullets are the mayor's suggestions. Other potential locations are on Park Street at Elmwood. There's 6 of them identified there. I won't read them all.
Mark, when it says 10 signs, that means you need 2 of them for each crosswalk, correct? So you have 5 crosswalks that you can mark with these, correct?
That's, I would say
Isn't
that
the
the
sign
signs are
going in
front
the
and back.
middle?
I would say they're front and back, aren't they?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're in the middle of the road.
Right.
Should be 1.
Yeah, I think the question Kathy's asking, I think they're front and back, so I think there's room to have them at 10 locations. That's how I read that.
Yes.
Allow 1 in a 2-way left. Okay, then that's good. Otherwise, I wasn't sure on that because I have seen them paired on both sides. Like if you have a crosswalk at the intersection of somewhere, you'd have it on each side. But okay, if there's 10.
Let me ask a question. A number of months ago, I raised the issue about South and Parmenter Streets.
Right. I'm wondering where it's supposed to be in the budget, and I'm wondering why that RFP hasn't been put in. We have it in the budget, Mike, so I will follow up with Sean and ask him when that is due.
I hear a lot of complaints regarding that one.
Yeah. But that.
And I don't know why, what prompted Sean to, I haven't worked with him on this list. This was an engineering product. So happy to follow up with him on anything. And it sounds like Kathy, you're going to follow up too.
On the beacon, yeah.
Beacon? You're talking about a beacon or about the signs?
The rectangular flashing beacon at Parmenter and South.
Yeah.
It's in the budget, so okay.
Appreciate that.
Of this list that I'm seeing here, I think Park at Elmwood would be a very prime location that it gets a lot of use.
So Park and Elmwood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One that I like on there is Pheasant Branch at Gaylord Nelson because it's next to the parking lot for the Conservancy that is heavily used. Parking lot right now is always overflowing if the weather is even reasonably nice.
It's
And so people are
shocking.
needing to park in Middleton Hills. But it doesn't have as good a sight distance as, for example, High Road at Frank Lloyd Wright. That's really clear in terms of
Okay.
people being able to see or drivers being able to see.
Okay.
I would mention that Parmenter Terrace is kind of a tough one right now with the construction. It goes right up and kind of
Yes.
takes out that vision corner there. And then you also have no stopping on Parmenter. So.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
Well, I think all of them, the top four are south at Middleton Street. Yes. The top four that were listed, I would agree with.
Do we
And
have
then
agreement?
What,
I would also, it'd be good, have one along Park Lawn because
Okay.
you,
Yes.
oh, by the
even
one that,
from University to Century Ave, or excuse me, from University to Donna Drive, you don't have any stop sign at all.
right,
And so whether you put it at Park Lawn and Maywood, which would cover the pool, and
yes,
Park lawn
I
between the pool and
agree.
tennis courts
I agree.
is a tremendous amount of people going across, even though there's not a street.
Yeah, very, very much. So add
Right.
that to
Right
the,
there at the parking lot.
so far we agree with the first four, and then Park Lawn between the pool and the tennis courts. So we're up to
Yes.
5. We have 5 more to place.
Park Street and Elmwood Avenue, I would, a lot of crossing there also.
And
Do we have beacons? We have 2 beacons along there now, don't we? One at Hubbard.
There's one at Hubbard and one, I think, at South and Park.
Yes.
and I'd really like to get the Pheasant Branch at Gaylord Nelson.
To cover the Trailhead Conservancy area.
Yes, that
Okay.
I see as more important than the High Road one.
Okay, so then we've got the first 5, or the first 4, excuse me. Then we have Park Lawn, tennis courts. We have Pheasant Branch at Gaylord Nelson. And Kathy, was it Park at
Park
Elmwood?
Street at Elmwood, yeah.
So that gives us, are we up to 8,
Mhm.
7?
I think
Oh,
that's
7.
We're up to
7.
7? Okay.
What about the schools?
Yeah, Dana. What does Dana think?
The schools?
You know, because I've only been in the community for a year, I'm trying to catch up with all of you where all of these locations are. So far,
Sure.
I think I support everything everything that you've been talking about, and I'm just trying to mentally picture, you know, the areas that would, I think, around Sauk Trail Elementary, which I believe you've identified already.
I don't think that was part of our list yet. So
No.
Branch Street at Franklin.
Right.
Yeah. That would be a good one, yeah.
That would be a good one.
Real good spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us up to 8 now, correct?
Yes.
And then is there anything by Northside Elementary?
No,
There,
but we have a beacon up there, don't we?
there's a beacon, and I think when school, at the beginning and end of school, there's actually crossing guards.
Yeah.
I know there are crossing guards there, and there might even be police there.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, we put a beacon there.
Okay.
About a
Yes.
year ago.
isn't there a beacon at Branch and Franklin?
Yes.
Is it at Franklin?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is it
At
at
Branch
Franklin?
Street in Franklin.
There's already a beacon there?
Yes.
Yes.
Then we don't need that one. Yeah.
Then, yep, we don't need that one then.
What a,
How about, here's one that we ran into this issue earlier in the year. So what about Park Street and Brookdale? They're at Cromrie. That's where it comes out, where there isn't the,
I'm going to say no on that one because we didn't put sidewalks in on Brookdale. So the kids, most of the traffic, the pedestrian traffic should be on Donna Drive and crossing at that four-way stop.
okay.
And that actually, if someone is coming out from Brookdale and going up to Cromrie, they shouldn't cross in the middle of that block, really. They should go up to Donna Drive and cross there so they can go in the main doors of Cromrie. And if they're trying to go to the high school, they can keep going down on the east side of Park and then cross at where the trail crosses.
Where we're putting the
I can.
Well, there's already one
Tennis
there at
courts.
the trail.
I can navigate to all these places. I'm currently at Northside School, and I think that, yeah, it's on your screen. So what was the discussion there? Was that there was a beacon there? Because I didn't think there was. Just so you know. I just wanted you to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Is that the one or a little further up?
Somewhere there's a beacon.
Yeah, I think you need to go up a block.
That's at the top of Ramsey Road. There's no, well, anyway, I'm not aware there's one at I think there's one up by Misty Valley. No one there?
No, okay, so there's not one, come down a little bit.
Well,
I thought there was a beacon.
and I'm not trying to steer you in that direction. I'm just trying to, supply the fill in any holes that we have in the conversation if it's helpful. So anyway, that's not there. What's the next location you're asking at the Cromrie?
Well, I would say if there isn't a beacon, I thought that we had put a beacon in there, so I don't know how.
Yeah, we maybe do need it there.
But recall there is a crossing guard there, if I may. There is a crossing guard.
There is a crossing guard.
Yeah. I'll let you direct me however you want to other intersections.
One area that I was wondering about would be on Park Street, north of University, either at Franklin or north, because people coming up Park Street don't have to stop when they get to Maywood. So they go from University up those 3 blocks rather quickly. Now you will pick up some Sauk Trail students there. You'll pick up some high school students along there too.
that's good.
Yeah, that's an excellent place.
Yes.
Oops, sorry. This is not, it's being very finicky here. There we go. So this is Franklin, I think. Yeah, that's Franklin.
Yeah, you want to be on Park and probably Park and Franklin, I would say.
Halfway between University and Maywood.
Well,
Yes.
there's basically thirds. So half is, no, there's no street at the halfway mark.
Okay.
If I
think the depth of the blocks, though, between Maywood and what's the next one, north, is not as deep as going further towards University.
Right, so probably at Park and Franklin would make the most sense.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, that sounds like a good spot. How many are we up to, Mark? I lost track again.
I think that's now 9. Park and Franklin. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we had the first 4. Oh, and the pool and tennis courts. Let me go back to the list here. Yeah, so we're at 9. And then earlier you were talking about Branch Street. Someone was talking about Branch Street, whether there's a beacon. I haven't checked that out yet. Does that make a difference?
Branch at Franklin at Sauk Trail School, there is.
You want me to, okay. I mean, I can
It's
double
near
check.
the exit from the Walgreens.
Yes, there is one. Yep.
Yeah,
Boy, you go
Right
past it
there.
all the time and you forget. Yep.
So the beacons have no effect on you, Dan? Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
All right, so we're at 10.
Good.
I'm sorry, we're at 9. We're at 9.
We're at 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I would say the other one then, just because it's an elementary school, if no one has anything better, it'd be Clover Nook Road at Stonefield Park. I mean, anytime you can get close to a school and help kids cross independent would be the only reason I would say that. So I'm good. I would be good with that.
Yeah.
Kathy, I would
It's a
agree
skewed
with you.
intersection. It seems like a good spot, Kathy.
Is that where the crosswalk is going to the school, the mid-block walk? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking?
It just says here Clover Nook Road at Stonefield Park.
Okay, so then that's this one here. That's this crosswalk. It's a mid-block crosswalk.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely needs it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
This looks
I don't
pretty
know
long.
where the
Okay.
crossing guard, is there a crossing guard down there during the day? Or I mean, during the school year? Or is
Well, when it's by a park like that, it's not just when school's going on.
Right.
Kids would be
Good
able
point.
to cross.
Okay. And actually, I know the answer to the crossing guard. The crossing guard's actually at South and Park Street.
Right.
That would be Jim. Yeah.
All right, so now we're at 10.
Okay,
And
very
then we're
good.
going to find out that you need 2 per crosswalk, and then we'll be back to per square one.
Aren't you a ray of sunshine?
Well, I really don't think we had 10 crosswalks in the budget. I just thought. But anyway, let's go with this. I'm good with it. Okay.
Well, I mean,
Do we want to make a motion to accept these recommendations?
I would
That would
move
be
that.
good.
I would
Okay.
move so.
I would second.
was that Mike
Okay.
Sexter?
Yep. Any more discussion on the item? All those in favor of that, say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Now we're on to policy on use of green crosswalks.
I'll try and not make this very complicated either. I mean, with the bus stop, that got into the weeds quite a bit. Sorry about that. So for several years now, we have been dealing with this idea of how do we make our path crossings more visible and safer. And Madison and many other cities have been, I'll go to some examples here. Madison and many other cities have been using green, which has been approved on an interim basis by the FHWA to denote shared crossings. And typically they're used in bike lanes. And the literature I gave you, much to my chagrin, the approval has been limited by the feds to bike lane crossings or bike lane facilities, let's say. However, in Madison, Madison specifically has done what I personally consider quite effective from a staff perspective and as a user perspective. They have been highlighting facilities that are, crosswalks basically, where paths cross. They've done it for bike lanes as well. There are examples of bike lanes, but these specifically in downtown Madison are, well, this one might be more, no, I think this is a bike lane too. These are definitely on the lines, along the lines of path crossings. And so, but that's not, I found out just today that they never actually got official approval for any of their green crosswalks, which really surprised me. In fact, their engineer that I talked to wasn't aware they hadn't gotten approval. I had found it that they hadn't. So that raises for Sean Starsky the question of liability. His concern is, and I had that in the communication here somewhere. His concern is that I won't find it now, but his concern is doing things by the book and making sure we don't expose the city to liability for incidents if there are any that hopefully don't ever occur. But if there's any, someone could say, well, these weren't officially approved, and that's Sean's concern. The way around that is to seek FHWA approval for such to deploy the green markings in that fashion. So what I've done with this email with this memo to you is I've laid out a set of a policy recommendation about where these would be used if you were so inclined. But before I go into that, why don't I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, so that you guys can discuss any concerns you have and go through this policy on your own here.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
This is Kathy. I do have a comment on this. For some time, we've been talking about crosswalk standards, and I would think this would be a piece of that. And so that we have something going forward that we're not piecemealing, which is why you want to have a green crosswalk standard. But I think it's more important to have a crosswalk policy or safety policy adopted in whole without breaking out the green crosswalks.
So is what you're saying, Kathy, then that your suggestion would be that we would propose the green for all our crosswalks as part of the crosswalk?
I have been asking that we work on having a crosswalk standards policy, so that when we say, okay, we have a arterial street and it's got 4 lanes without intersection, then we need to have countdown timers would be an example of that. The whole having a policy for all crosswalks and not say, okay, this is our green policy for these kind, or that it's more fleshed out, not just saying now we're going to talk about green crosswalks.
So basically have a policy that is somewhat based on some kind of data, so that when we're just not piecemealing it all together, we have a policy.
Right, because it's been known that if certain neighborhoods want this for their crosswalk because they asked for it, or
sure,
based on data, we have this many cars, this is the conditions, and this is how we could. And one thing that I liked about reading this is that the resin paint on crosswalks that are really busy and that last longer. That is something that I would like to see in a crosswalk policy, is that so they stand up, the paint stands out, and these crosswalks are very prominent. And this is just one piece of it. We talked about how, like, when you go to Cross Plains and you see their crosswalks, they have this template that really stands out. And I'd like to see more of that, not just to make them more visible, safer as a whole.
Yes, Kathy, I agree with you. Want to keep the sidewalks are so clear, and even going into Madison around the university, those green crosswalks make it easier.
They do. And even what they're painted, where they look like just white with brick, like they look brick pavers or whatever, but in that kind of pattern, but they stand out so much better because it's resin paint and it doesn't fade as quickly. Mm. And if it's part of our standards when we're bidding projects, then we would say that this is what we need on these crosswalks.
Well, and I appreciate Kathy's longtime advocacy for this policy standard. I agree that we need one overall. Very candidly, what's driving this is the next agenda item and how we handle the design of the North Mendota Trail, which is why I bit off this piece for now, because I have to work with Sean on the bigger picture, which frankly is more of a public works matter anyway. But But yes, Kathy's right. I mean, ideally, we would have a discussion about all citywide, all crosswalks. When do you even need to use striping? What type of striping do you use?
Right.
Longitudinal striping.
Mhm.
And then when do you need well, frankly, when do you need in-street pedestrian signs? I mean, Sean was basically getting at that with his memo a little bit. So Sean took a component of this too, essentially, with the in-street pedestrian signs. That's essentially part of a crosswalk policy as well.
Mark, would this be part of our agenda item number 7 too, part of our comprehensive plan, some of these policies?
Well, yeah, I mean, the comprehensive plan would say develop the policy. So, I mean, we're not going to, I don't see us developing the policy as part of the comprehensive plan. That's an offshoot of the comprehensive plan. But frankly, as you saw the other night, Dan, our comprehensive plan is getting quite lengthy anyway, because we're probably going to some more detail than some comprehensive plans do. But
well, it is comprehensive.
There you go. So, but anyway, that's why this is before you. As obviously, Kathy has been requesting this for a long time, and I respect that. Specifically, the issue is how does this affect the design? And as Dan will tell you, we've got some challenges with the North Mendota Trail that we're trying to work through with some negotiations with property owners, etc. So I'm just trying to have a policy, if you will, here. For example, if we had under okay, let's start with this. So bullet point 1, limit use of green pavement markings to vehicle, bike and bike conflict areas, instead of applying them along an entire bikeway facility. The reason that one's in there is because there's some cities, I saw this in Seattle, where they take their entire bike lane and make it green. Well, that gets expensive in a hurry, and I don't think there's a need for that. The cost of these is $13 a square foot. I don't remember what. It's quite a bit more than traditional crosswalk markings. So that was the first one I suggested, is we don't need to mark an entire bike lane. So then the second bullet is apply green markings wherever there's a shared use path, wherever a shared use path crosses, and then there's 2 categories, a public or private street. And then so here I'm using the example of Park Street by the pool, Creekview Drive, which is a private street at the North Mendota Trail that serves Harbor Village, multifamily community, and then Highland Way. So I just threw some examples in there. And then the second example is a driveway that serves a commercial land use that generates at least 50 trips a day. That number is arbitrary. It could say 25, it could say 100, that I just picked one. Because I was thinking Costco, where that conflict point is, where the path comes out along the South Fork of the creek, and then turns in front of Costco, having a little extra highlighted crosswalk there so that the drivers don't just, stop in the middle of the crosswalk, I think would be helpful. So that's why those 2 ideas are here. The third bullet is do not apply markings along a shared use path at driveway crossings or serving, basically single family homes or duplexes or, things like that. We don't have many examples of those in the city, but it just doesn't seem like that, is necessary for an investment, because in theory, those people use that driveway. It's not open to as much visitors, if you will. Fourth is apply green markings to help extend bike lanes through wide or complex intersections. An example of that is, it's right here actually, although it's not a bike lane, but this certainly is a good example of in Madison, this, sorry, here we go. This obviously is a complex intersection with a standard 4-way intersection, and then you've got this path going through. If that were a bike lane, I would recommend using green there. Perhaps a good example is actually the Regent Street by the stadium there, the Regent, whatever that all is, Monroe Street, that intersection. So, and then the last bullet was, ensure that the city's public works budget, pavement marking budget is increased enough to maintain the green pavement application. So that was what I started with an eye towards having a policy in place to guide the North Mendota Trail planning. But as Kathy said, we need to do a bigger picture than that.
Mark, you're not mentioning any types of material or the durability of that. do we want to say anything about that? I know products change and they improve over time, but by just saying green, we really do want something that stands the test of time in the traffic.
Right, and that's where Madison, maybe I didn't put it in the packet, Madison has given us their standard. So this is, oh, I did have some more really technical stuff. I just decided not to put it in the packet. It was very, very detailed. I think from a policy discussion level standpoint, your point, Kathy, is well taken, that we want to make sure that we use, you know, a standard that requires minimal maintenance and that, you know, stands the test of time.
Yeah.
That was just
or traffic, yeah.
That was just assumed. So I would just turn to our colleagues at Madison for their expertise, because they frankly have been experimenting with this now for probably 8 or 10 years, certainly at least half a dozen years. And frankly, the first applications didn't last very long. I didn't give you the examples showing where they faded, but there's.
Oh, they're awful.
Yeah. And so I completely agree with your concern. I mean, the examples of that.
It's better to have nothing than to have them all fading. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Madison, the one at Regent and at the stadium here. Let's see, this is Campus Drive. Where's the stadium? Why am I? Oh, I haven't gotten to Campus Drive yet. Here we go. Here's the stadium. Yeah, this one has really faded, and it was one of their earlier applications, and this is obviously a very complicated. You can see how there's barely anything left here. You know, very complicated intersection. I have biked through this several times. I think it works. You know, even having what's there is still better than nothing, but you don't want it to fade after such a short period of time. So there, yeah, it's definitely faded a lot, but it really does help guide. You know, it helps bicyclists, pedestrians, other trail users, and it helps motorists. But when it's faded like this, that's a problem. That material is no longer being used by Madison. Madison instead is using what you see now over here on the University corridor. They've been putting some new ones in, and that's where I showed you the pictures. You know, these have a new type of material, and I'm not an engineer, so I can't go into it. But these have well, even there it's coming up a little bit, isn't it? This one's not fading, but it looks like it's flaking. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we need to make sure whatever we use, we want to use I have their standards. I have this. The specs for this. So the question is, do we want to move towards this I think here's what I recommend as a staff recommendation. Do you want to have staff continue to pursue a policy for doing this, for applying marking green pavement for crosswalks? And if so, do you want us to apply to the Federal Highway Department or to get interim approval? I mean, those are really the direction I'm looking for tonight.
Well, it sounds like the consensus is yes to the green, but I also think that it would be an excellent idea if we applied for the interim permitting of it.
It's called interim approval, yep.
Yeah, interim approval.
And how long that takes, I couldn't tell you.
Is there some way to also capture that as a committee, we would like to pursue the city putting together a more comprehensive policy on crossings?
That's direction we've already received, but you can certainly reemphasize it.
Okay. Does that need to go to a different committee as well to get their
Public Works
support for that?
Wasn't Public Works hoping that we could put something together for them?
They are, but I need Sean's help to do that as well. So because it gets pretty technical and it's engineering related, I would appreciate his help. So yes.
Susan, did you have
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Susan, did you have your hand up?
No, I think I didn't get it down from a long time ago.
Okay.
I just lowered it, but now there we go.
Okay, Kathy, did you have something?
I just want to say, Mark, I think where this was going is we wanted to have just not anything formal right away, is just to come up with some ideas and suggestions, not that we have to have it and then bring it forward to Public Works, not, and there were some people on this committee that were willing to work as a task force to just come up with some ideas on how we could improve the standards.
That's
No,
correct.
not that we wanted to leave it on your shoulders or anything.
No, right. I just, very candidly, I just haven't been able to prioritize it as much as I wanted to, given all the other things that we've been dealing with lately. So I can, with the comp plan almost done, you know, I've always promised to work on it after the comp plan. I'm trying to get to it sooner. Hopefully by August we can start, or late August. But you know, in the meantime, what's pushing this in the meantime is what do we do with the North Dakota Trail with that design? The first phase does not involve any crosswalks, so it hasn't been an issue. But the second phase crosses the street and a couple private streets and a driveway at Middleton Shores. So,
This is Jim, we did have a committee, I think, Mark, if you remember,
we had one.
Nate Day and I met with you and Stan last October and had a meeting for about an hour talking about this, but nothing came of that at that point.
That's correct. And that's on me. I'm sorry I couldn't get back to it. Had to prioritize some other things.
I think it just sort of vanished with the winter.
Okay, do we have any more comments on that? And at some point here, as we finish up the comprehensive plan, we'll be able to get back to having
this discussion. Okay.
This discussion. Okay.
It's fine.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to the agenda item 6, North Mendota Trail.
I already started. I'm just looking to see where that starts in the packet. I was starting to update you already. So for those of you, so Dana, you're new, and Pat, you may not have seen this before either. We have this project on the northeast side of the city that's been a priority for the city for a couple of years now. It's been funded. The western part's been funded for construction. The whole design is nearly completed. It's broken into 3 segments. It shows 2 segments, but the red is broken into 2 segments itself. The part from the blue, essentially, well, from the signal, the Branch Street signal to Allen Boulevard signal, that's phase A, and we're following the alternative route and then following the solid route. And that has the bid's been awarded. All the documents are signed as of this week. And next step is to schedule a pre-construction meeting, and we're going to construct this summer. I don't have an exact timeline, but I would imagine as early as August. The second, are there any questions about that phase? The second phase is from the next 2 signals, Allen to Highway Way, and that is has become a bit controversial. Well, I hate to use the word controversial. It's led to some questions. And I've been working closely with Alda Ramsey on this. We need to get the consent from 3 adjoining property owners. The folks at Middleton Shores are on board, and they just want to make sure that there's a side agreement. So what we're requesting is that the adjoining property owners grant us a 7-foot wide access easement. In exchange, the city is going to take on maintenance in perpetuity, which includes both pavement repair and snow removal. So that's the arrangement that we are making. The folks at the top of the hill in the Highland Way condos, they have consented to this agreement, and the council approved that agreement last week for that exchange. Middleton Shores has verbally consented, but they want to have some additional language added that make sure they get some money for compensating them for the loss in landscaping. And that's no problem. The Harbor Village folks have asked a variety of questions, and they want more information. The city has working with Vanderwall Associates, and working with Dan, we got them renderings to show what the changes will look like. I didn't put those in your packet because I just felt there was more detail than you needed. I can get those to you if you would like to see them. But this is basically, we did this for the neighborhood association because they had concerns at their driveway crossing. I'm sorry, at their private driveway. Let's go visit the lake. Okay, we've done this with north up. Oh, no wonder I went to Monona. So, yeah, so here's one driveway crossing. This is at the bottom of the hill by the bridge. And then they're most worried about this crossing here because it's their sight lines are tough here. So this is, again, an application of where I thought the green crosswalks, and they specifically have asked for that because they're worried that coming out, with all the vegetation here, some of which will be cleared, they just want to be reminded that this is a two-way path continuing down the hill then too. So Dan and I continue to be in negotiations with these folks. Going back to then, are there any questions about that phase B? Also, we're building a separate bridge structure here. The bridge is going to be, right now, we're gonna not touch this bridge that's here today. The path will go off to the side here and then cross next to the bridge. That'll be nice. And then the last phase is the orange phase. That's been preliminarily designed at the very preliminary stages still. We're getting feedback from staff. The hope there is, and that'll be our next series of discussions, as Dan knows all too well, where we're going to try and get the consent of all the property owners here at the top of the hill to have a 7-foot access easement along the back of their properties, and then continue to the east city limits. Let's see, north is not quite up again. There we go. So then we would continue along in front of what used to be Family Dollar General, whatever it's called, and then continue to the east city limits, which is at Signature Drive. And at that point, the county is going to build their portion of the trail, which, as you've already probably seen, the trail is actually here already. You can see it right up here along Bishop's Bay. So that trail's been built, goes by Inspire Preschool, goes under Highway M, and it's been built now along Highway M up by in the town of Westport further. So there will be one continuous path going around the lake. Go ahead. That's it.
In full transparency to our new members, the only thing that is funded, the only thing that we have funding for, is up to the lights at Highland Way. We have a funding source for that. Anything beyond Highland Way at this point, there is no funding source. So in light of where we are financially with the COVID and everything else, it's entirely possible that and probable that this last phase will take some time to get accomplished. But currently, you can ride on Highland, and you can go kind of in front of those houses to get from the Highland to the Highland, kind of go through the horseshoe. So what we've been focusing on is up to the Highland Way. And the good news there is that we've pretty much got agreements with everybody but one group, one organization, and we're still working on that. So the update is that we're hopeful that before the summer is out, that we'll be able to get an agreement in place for an easement at Harbor Village.
Yeah. So that's the update that Dan and I had. Is there anything else you're looking for from me, Dan?
No, I think that's good. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, and just also full transparency, the cost is about 1.3 million I think was budgeted. 1.2 maybe? 1.2 sounds closer.
Yeah, I think it's 1.2.
Yeah. Not cheap.
No, not at all. And therein lies the issue with continuing, because I think the next segment was 1.4.
Yeah.
It was a little more expensive. So.
And to add to that, originally I was hoping for Dane County Park Grant funding, but they are not in their funding cycle this year. And with COVID, like Dan alluded to already, it's going to be harder to compete for dollars for a project like this. But I'm optimistic that if the county, if they reinstate that program, that we would be a high priority, because it would finish their investment around the lake. So that's the preferred funding source, but we may have to look at other funding sources again. I really hope we don't have to go back to the funding source that was really going to be difficult to comply with, but that was called the Enhancement Fund, Transportation Alternatives Program. But
and that wasn't a fully funded. That
right.
was right. So even with the Dane County, any funding from Dane County wouldn't be a full amount.
Right.
Okay.
And TIF is not a funding source for that one, by the way.
Correct. It's outside of the boundary for TIF. Any other questions or comments? Okay, the next item is our comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I wanted to, this was kind of an afterthought, Dan. I didn't even tell you I was going to put it in the packet, but it occurred to me, since we were taking it to Plan Commission, I might as well run it by you folks here at the same time. Trying to get back to where it was. Sorry, the computer's dragging. So a comprehensive plan is, as I'm sure some of you know, the state requires communities to have a comprehensive plan, and they're supposed to be updated every 10 years. We're a few years overdue. Abby, my three colleagues in the planning department, and I have been working on this now for quite some time and making a big push here in the last few months to get this completed. There are many different elements to the plan: land use, economic development, housing, utilities, etc. This is the transportation element. And so the committee has previously discussed the concepts that underlie this chapter, but I wanted to see if you had any comments. Obviously, I'm not going to read through this all. There's several pages here. What I wanted to say, simply before you discuss it, is that the concept that we're really centering this plan on, the transportation element, is to really focus on reclaiming public streets for the pedestrian first, and build from that, to have shared streets, to have basically not the streets not be oriented to auto traffic, but to have it be a complete street for everybody, for all users, focusing on the most vulnerable people, which are pedestrians. So that's the underpinning for the plan. Dan, how would you like to proceed with this item? There's obviously a lot of words.
Yeah, a whole lot of words. Has everybody had an opportunity to kind of review this at all? And are there any questions or comments or additions or subtractions that anybody has?
And I will add that A and B, the letters and other letters, are intended to be strategies, and then the numbers after them are action statements. We can just go through the strategies if you want quickly, and I won't read the actions. Is that maybe?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we had the overall goal: Middleton's transportation system will be safe, reliable, convenient, affordable, efficient, and less reliant on single occupancy vehicles, so as to reduce environmental impact, promote active lifestyles, and enhance prosperity for all people, regardless of age, ability, or mode of transportation. That's our overall goal. Anybody have any suggestions for enhancing that, or does that? Just jump in.
Yeah, if anybody has anything to add, go ahead, and so that Mark can kind of keep moving.
I welcome interruptions.
All right.
Everyone knows I will talk otherwise. So strategy A is reclaim public streets so that they become safe green corridors that increase transportation choices. It's basically a strategy for related to that first goal. is to promote active lifestyles, improve health, beautify the city. And then this gets into complete streets, shared streets, narrower streets. And then each of those will have a description after that. B is improve the focus here is on safety of all modes of transportation through street design, land use decisions, and education. And there, Kathy, in number 3, establish a uniform citywide policy for crosswalk design standards. That's been in there for quite some time. Also, this has an educational component here. As part of this, my research for this, I contacted the UW TOPS Lab, Traffic Operations, I can't remember exactly what it stands for, and I got them to supply me with all the data they had according to statewide crash history for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. And so I tried to look at some patterns in the city. There's, including the top 10 intersections that have the most crashes by different measures, crash per crash incidences, crash per traffic volume, etc. The Parmenter University intersection stood out at the top. No matter how you looked at it, that always jumped out, but we just took care of that a year or two ago with reconstructing it. So hopefully that's gotten better. One thing I did find, and what I really was focusing on, was safety for pedestrians along Century and University Avenues. That was a big focus. And so I have some action items related to that, one of which is, this is one of my favorite ones actually. Number 4, reduce long gaps between marked crosswalks so that major streets present less of a barrier to non-motorists. If Kathy Jones is still on the line, she will appreciate that because she's been talking about this at Harbor Village for a long time. At a harbor, where do you live? Century Harbor.
Yes.
So what I did is I have something in the comp plan that shows the distances between crosswalks, and that Century Avenue is the worst street in the city, going from basically, well, the length of Century Avenue from the Beltline East. It has some of the biggest gaps, in several cases more than 1,000 feet between crosswalks. So that's something we're going to address.
Yes.
So there you go, Kathy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Letter C is establish and maintain a robust bikeway network that is comfortable and accessible to people of all ages so that bicycling and other personal mobility devices become more attractive than driving for most trips of 3 miles or less. So again, the idea of vulnerability is pedestrians and shorter trips, and then bicycling and scooters and other things like that, trying to make people make that more attractive. The next strategy deals with transit. Create conditions that help transit become the preferred mode for trips that are not made by walking, biking, or other micromobility solutions. The next one is work collaboratively with stakeholders of the rail corridor. So then this talks about freight rail, freight trains, advocate for the return of passenger service. Strategy F has to do with freight delivery, not just trains, but just freight delivery. Actually, that's interesting. This is something got garbled. This was actually related heading for the airport. Okay, I can't understand. I wasn't aware that had happened. Oh, I see. No one on the Plan Commission caught that either. Unless I did that when no, this is from the Plan Commission. All right, so this is duplicate down here. So we obviously made a mistake pasting it in here. I apologize. G is adopt parking demand management strategy.
Mark,
So-
can we go back to F really quick?
Sure. Yep.
And I don't know if this is where it would fit or not. And maybe we already have this. Do we have a idling ordinance time limit for diesel idling? For delivery trucks?
I don't think we do. Dan, do you or Kathy, do you know? Or Susan?
I don't believe that we do.
But Pat, thank you for saying that because I don't think I have that in there. These actions are obviously related to the airport. Oh, no, they're not.
2 and 3 aren't. Yeah.
I don't know what happened here. But I will make a note of that to make sure we do that because that's a common in other communities too.
And then I had a kind of a more general question. And the reason it came up was more in C than anything else. How do we address people who are disabled and ADA compliance and stuff like that? Is that somewhere else in the plan?
I have some I've definitely been focusing on ADA issues. I have some pictures. I'm trying to find if there's a specific action down here. What says regardless of age, ability, or mode of transportation. That's where that idea was one of the things that I list under that is making sure that, for example, when we reconstruct sidewalks, like what's happening along Donner Drive, right now, both sidewalks for the last probably 2 months have been, there's been sections that have been unpaved. And I personally find that unacceptable. I think in Madison, they have a rule or an ordinance that says if when you redo a street, one side has to always be fully operational. You can't take both sidewalks out of commission. And so it's things like that that I want to make sure we address in our, for accessibility reasons.
Okay, good.
But do you have any other suggestions specifically?
No, I really don't. It just, when I read C, it was almost like we were assuming that you had the ability to bike. Or,
Right.
And that was the one. It was just kind of, well, yeah. But we have transit in there as well.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I will make sure that I've actually really wanted to have accessibility be a major theme throughout the whole document. And it's not just me talking, the planning staff are feeling that way. So we take your comment to heart, and I will make sure that we aren't missing that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I mentioned parking demand and management, particularly in the vicinity of downtown and mixed-use centers to improve efficiency and enable a reduction in surface parking spaces while enabling businesses and multifamily communities to have access to parking spaces within reasonable proximity. And then there's some actions related to that. H has to do with the airport. And then I is forging partnership with other agencies, the private sector, surrounding communities, nonprofit organizations. So that's how it's organized. Anybody?
Very nice.
Well, thank you. It's been a long time coming, and we have more work to do, but we're getting there. Did I miss any concepts?
I had one question. B, is that referring to pedestrian, bicycling, and motor vehicles?
The safety part, you mean? It's basically, you said B, right, Jim?
B.
Yeah, that's really safety of all users, roadway users. I actually am thinking about moving this to a different, it kind of interrupts the flow from A to C to D. So I'm thinking about putting that somewhere else, but that's meant to be safety of everybody using the street, and police policies with enforcement, education campaigns, etc.
Okay, because that's the part I was getting at is I don't know if under B7, promote education campaign to increase awareness and adherence to traffic laws. I think oftentimes when you refer to traffic laws, people think of motor vehicles. And I don't know if something could be added to that for motor vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycling or something.
Okay. And some people will say that bikes and bikes in particular, they'll say must know the rules of the road as well, and that's obviously very true. And motorists need to understand that bicyclists have certain rights as well. For example, most people don't realize this, but a bicyclist can be at a traffic signal, and if it doesn't change in 45 seconds because they didn't trigger it, the bike has the right to proceed on red. That's a fairly new law, but many people probably don't know that, and they think the bicyclist is breaking the law. So that's why I wrote it in a general way that everybody needs to be aware of traffic laws, but I will clarify what you just said.
Yeah, something like that. You know, all users of transportation have to be aware of traffic laws or something like that.
Okay, anybody else? I will say that, and I'm looking to Nate in particular, maybe Peter, I am struggled with this organizationally for some time, but I have gravitated towards the idea of treating bicyclists and micro mobility, like the e-scooters, segways, sort of lumping them together. We are having, in fact, I just saw on LNO, Dan and Kathy, I didn't even realize that was on your agenda on Tuesday. But we are having discussion in the city right now about how we regulate e-bikes, e-scooters, etc. So I decided to lump them all together in one category. Any reaction to that?
I think it's fine.
It's fine.
Okay. I would, by the way, Dan and Kathy, I saw there was a referral to the CLC. It might be good for that to be referred to Ped Bike Transit too. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's the thought that I had when I saw the minutes last night. Up to you guys, obviously. Okay. Anybody, anything else? Thank you for those comments.
Okay, then we'll move on to consideration of resolution supporting bus rapid transit funding.
I do not have an updated resolution for you as I had hoped to do. This is a draft that came from Madison based on one that they've supplied to different communities, hoping to, it's very common for communities when they submit applications to the federal government to line up other support from their neighbors or other agencies. But the idea here is to support the city of Madison in their application for funding for a bus rapid transit. I was going to tweak this a little bit, but generally it strikes the right tone. We have oftentimes done this in the form of a letter signed by the city administrator or the mayor, but I felt it would be good, since the deadline isn't until mid-August, I thought it would be good for the committee to weigh in and do this in the form of a resolution. The city of Middleton hopes to be part of the BRT system in the future, so I thought this would be a good way to show our support, solidarity with Metro Transit. This doesn't commit the city to funding the BRT in Madison, other than through, I'm sure that's going to have an impact on the city anyway, in terms of the Metro's costs. But what I'm saying is this doesn't commit us to extra. But this is not, by doing this, this is just a feel-good resolution, for lack of a better word. It's just to support the city of Madison. It doesn't commit us to BRT or to do anything outside of what will be done with funding, which is to be determined. I'm really not helping make the argument.
No.
I'm tired, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is getting to be a long meeting.
It's getting
This
kind of
is-
long, I agree.
If you want, we can postpone this or discuss it some other time, or if you don't want to do it, so let me know that too.
Mark, when do we need to approve this if we're going to? What's the time
Well,
frame?
it was originally going to be just a council resolution, and when I realized on Tuesdays I put the packet together, I thought, oh, let's just run this by you guys too.
No, but when does council need?
They
When
want it by
when
mid-August.
does Madison need it?
By mid-August. So I was eyeing the council meeting on August, whatever the first council meeting is.
Well, I'd move we refer it to council.
Okay.
Right.
Just one question about it. Mark, do you think Mineral Point route or the Odana route would help Middleton more?
They've selected, they've selected their preferred alignment. I have been following it. What they want to do is come down, I should have even put a map in here for you. They want to come down the Whitney Way to the West Transfer Point, and then come back up to Mineral Point Road. So it's really Mineral Point primarily, and then it will end at High Point Road. I can show you it very quickly. And I'm sorry, this is what I get for throwing that onto a meeting without any more thought. Here we go. Oh, this isn't even the final, another map. So you can see the arrow on the left here. So this is Mineral Point Road, the red here, left, right. And the idea of connectivity going north towards Middleton. This is phase 1. Is they're blue, solid blue, and then phase 2 is going north and south from the airport south to Fitchburg and an extension to the west. Phase 1 actually now is going to go to this. It's hard to see, but it's the High Point Road intersection. So this map's actually a little bit out of date. This is all happening in the last few months. So what will happen with Bus Rapid Transit is it will restructure the bus system in Madison, and Middleton's routes will then connect to, both at Mineral Point and at Hilldale. We'll still have some direct routes going to the square, I'm told, and that's why we want to remain actively involved here. But the idea is to have this be the core of the bus service in Madison. And what I'd like to see is a loop that comes up University Avenue and then goes south and connects here, so that becomes part of our core route. And that's why working on the resolution now, and I was going to add some language basically saying that this is our hope and expectation that will be implemented as a future phase.
Could you make sure and add that for council?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there has to be something that in the resolution that expresses our needs, wants.
And Dan, that's exactly why I wanted to try and write one, customize it a little bit more. So thank you. I will make sure that gets added. University and business park corridor. Okay. So the motion is to refer this to the council. Is that what Susan did?
Yes.
And there's a second. And Susan, that's with revised language to include
yes,
something in reference to our interests.
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, any other questions?
Who was the second?
Mike.
Lester. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. I think that pretty much brings us to the end, unless you have any other update that you need to give us, Mark?
I simply was going to mention, Mike asked me to mention this, that under public comment at the beginning, Mike has really tried to encourage committees not to have that as a topic. But if we continue to have it, which obviously that's a decision for the chairperson, and I mean I've had it on the agendas ever since the committee was formed, as I have with any committee I staff except for zoning board. The thing is, if you do accept public comment at meetings, it just can't be anything that you discuss or act on. He wanted me to remind you of that as a policy. And that's something that I would normally say if that were to happen anyway. But I just wanted to point that out.
So, Mark, are you saying that he's saying we shouldn't have public comment at the committee from people that want to comment on something that's on the committee's agenda?
No, I wasn't saying that. The way we have it on our agenda right now is it's it's just public comment in general.
Right.
The concern is if somebody brings something up that's not noticed,
Then it would become an action item, and
exactly.
we don't
right.
have.
We can't act on something, but I think
and so
I like to have public comment.
well, that's been my sense over the years from committee members, and that there's members of the community that like to come to meetings and have their voices be heard. So that's why it's persisted, and I've never been directed otherwise by chairperson of a committee.
So what is his reason for not including it?
It's not, he's saying that just be cautious that you don't get engaged in conversations that are not on the agenda. That's his. I was going to say this to you before when we got to public comment, and I forgot it. So that's why I'm bringing it up now. It's not a big deal right now. It's just I just wanted to remind you that public
I
comment.
think as long as we run it like we do at council, where people have a 3-minute limit and
Right.
can talk about whatever they want.
Right. That's always been the intent. So,
And that's better than having public discussion on each item.
No, we wouldn't break it down to each item. If somebody wants to
No,
speak.
I mean, when
there's-
someone interrupts in the middle of the
Right.
meeting and wants to discuss an item.
there's another
Correct.
committee I'm referring to that will go nameless, but we've been looking
Yep,
for public comment, and so that's why we just want to make it clear to everybody that public comment is the time to listen and consider items in the future for the agenda if they require follow. So that's all I was trying to convey.
Right.
Get out.
Okay.
So, okay.
Very good. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I believe that's all we have. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would make that a motion to adjourn, correct.
And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you,
Take care,
everyone.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.